As I'm trying to get out of this disoriented feeling, the light begins to move, just like if I was holding a flashlight, a beam of light, and I'd move it like this, the whole beam would move. And that circle on the ground started to move, and then it just clicked off. And I looked back up, like I'd seen where it was coming from earlier when I looked up to figure out if it was a helicopter. And it went off, and I'm looking up, trying to see what it is. And all I can see is a dark shape. I can't tell if it's got wings or tails. There's no noise. There's no wind. And I can see where it blacks out the stars behind it as it's moving. And just a couple of seconds, maybe 3 or 4 seconds at the most, and then it just disappeared.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Scott Gearen. Scott, welcome back. All right.
Good to be here.
In the last episode, I kind of foreshadowed that we would be talking about more anomalous stuff in this particular episode. Going back to 1980 at Woodbridge, I know you weren't there to witness anything, but you were there to hear kind of some of the chatter on base about what had happened. You'd also mentioned an incident before kind of the finale, so to speak, that had happened on the base that I think somebody that you knew or somebody who was there at the base had reported, but is not as well known. Can you talk about some of those things? So first, kind of the gossip, rumint, and then this other incident that happened.
A little bit of those type of the rumors and things was just suddenly, coming in the base as normal to work and picking up the people. Hey, did you see a UFO? Did you see a UFO? Did you hear about the UFOs? UFOs landed in the forest. I didn't see a UFO. I didn't know anything about it, but that was the talk. It was for several weeks. People were talking about, the UFOs. Was in the local paper, something about it, but I never saw it. It was just, I guess, my connection, certainly being at Woodbridge during that time period, being as close to Rendlesham Forest, being in Rendlesham Forest. If you came on the base at Woodbridge, drive through the housing areas, the shopping areas, and you go close to the flight line, and then you would go sort of down. It doesn't mean anything if I say left or right, but if I was driving on, we take a right turn and we go almost to the end of the flight line, and our building, our unit was there. And it was close to the flight line, so that if we had our missions or alerts or whatever, we kept everything ready to go. We could just get it put on a vehicle and take it right out to the airplanes, the C-130s or the helicopters or whatever it was, and take off from there. But it was maybe 100 yards from the fence line, where Rendlesham, on the other side of the fence, was the forest. And so pretty much every morning when we were doing our exercises, team PT or whatever it was, somebody was going down that road, and the fence was not going to keep anybody out from where it was there. We would easily jump over the fence. It wasn't like we had to climb it or anything. We would just jump right over, and then we would run through the forest on the different trails that were out there. And there was this duplex type of house out there as well. And guys I worked with lived in the duplexes. The NCYIC of the team lived out there in one of them, and other guys lived in the other side of it. So we were always out in the forest. I never saw anything that was weird. It was always, you're in the forest running or whatever. It's always kind of just, not to say an eerie feeling, but it's just always something about it, just being out there at night or day. I know some of the talk about it, the lighthouse along the coastline there, that was mentioned as a possible, the lights that would rotate around the white light and the red light. And some people say that that was what was seen as far as the UFO was just the lights from the lighthouse. But I never saw the lights from the lighthouse. I was out there quite a few times at night. We would do navigation training. Somebody would preposition patient or a down pilot, simulated down pilot out there somewhere. And then we would go and find them and then get extracted. And, but I never saw the lighthouse at that time. When we would do our water work and jumping into the North Sea, where we were, Bodsey, I think was the name of it, which we would see the lighthouse then when we were out on the water, but I never saw it from the forest. So, I mean, that was kind of neat to say, well, I can look back on and say, wow, I was close to it, you know, but it didn't mean the same thing to me as it would now to say, and I'm going to be out there every night looking for something. It was just, oh, a UFO, okay. It wasn't something that struck me as, wow, that's something I want to be a part of or see. It's just never, I would say as a believer, it's just something that's just like, okay, there's something out there. I don't know what it is. You hear the stories about UFOs, but I wouldn't say I was a skeptic or I was a believer. It was just, it is what it is. As it is now to me, I was more of a believer that there is something out there, not just the secret projects that the military and the governments have. There's something out there that's unknown.
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Baen Books at Baen.com.
Now, what about this other incident? There was, I think you alluded to somebody else had seen something before the main.
Name was Lori, and I'll get back to you with more information on that. But she was on duty, night duty at the guard. They weren't, you pull up on a base now, you have a nice little brick type house, where the security forces are in. And back then, it wasn't much more than the old telephone box. There was the gate where they would stand to check the vehicles coming in and out. And she was out there or another person, and they saw some type of an object come in and go along above the flight line, but along the area of the flight line and then disappear. She also talks about a mantis creature. I never saw anything like that either, but those are stories that she has. And, she reported them, but they never made the same type of awareness to people as the big one there in Rendlesham Forest over the 2 nights in December.
Where did she see this thing?
On Woodbridge.
And just kind of like walking along, or?
She was doing some type of patrol around that area where her check was, and I've heard her tell the story, and came face to face with some type of a mantis. She said it was a mantis-looking creature. What it was, I don't know. I'll get back with you on contact for her.
Okay. Yeah. Has she discussed this publicly?
A little bit, yes, she has.
Okay.
I forget her podcast, God and a Cup of Coffee. She did have a death in the family last year. She kind of dropped off a little bit. I reached out to her not too long ago, and she hasn't answered me, so I'm not sure what's going on with her.
Did you know her at the time, or did you? Okay.
Oh,
What was the kind of the next brush with this stuff that you've had? Just chronologically.
the next really big brush I had with it was, and like I say, wasn't something that I went through. UFOs were not part of my daily thoughts. Nothing was there. When I was in Iraq during that time period, was it 2007 to 14 time period? You get Armed Forces Network. And one of the things that they would show, and on Armed Forces Network, one of the shows was Ancient Aliens. So I started, you didn't have a lot of choices of things to watch. What AFM's putting out, that's what you watched.
And you chose Giorgio,
I enjoyed watching it, and a couple of other guys over there did as well. And so we really got into the more awareness of the ancient things that are factual here on this earth and can't be explained, and the unknown, the UFO side of it. And I remember talking one day, and I said, by 2030, and this was back in 2013, 2014, I said, by 2030, I think there's going to be something that comes out that, and back then the word non-human intelligence wasn't a word that I used, but there's going to be contact made that's everybody's aware of by 2030. So that was, we talked about different things. I said, I'm going to keep my camera with me because I'm going to get pictures one day. I was in my head. I knew it one day I would. And we laughed. Oh, yeah. So I keep a camera. And I was thinking of another time I would stay outside waiting to record explosions, which was kind of crazy too. But so anyway, left there. And we stayed in touch. And in 2019, I was in Florida, in Panama City Beach. And that was when I had this sighting that I had that has not been explained what it is.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
Whether it's a true unidentified phenomena or whether it's something that's reverse engineered or whether it's outright top secret project, I have no idea what it is. What I do know is I saw it and I took pictures and video. And, my first thought was when I did see it on a laptop computer where I could look at the pictures that had been downloaded, it was like, there's something to this. It's an unknown. It's not an airplane. It's not a helicopter, which, when I was first looking at it, those were my thoughts. I was like, is this an airplane? No, it can't be an airplane. It's a helicopter. Watch it. No, it's doing weird things. It's definitely not a helicopter. And then I took some pictures and some video, and I tried to find out what it was. I thought, well, you're military. I was military. We have those, still hold those patriotic type feelings to protect knowledge. And I thought, well, if this is a secret project, I'm not going to tell anybody about it. And so that's why I relayed to an Air Force member what I had seen. And they said, well, send it to us. We'll get somebody to analyze it. And I did. And then a few weeks later, I was told that person that analyzed it didn't know what it was. and they were going to send it to another agency with better capabilities. And I don't know, I didn't ask who it was or where it was going. I said, oh, great, man, I want to know, maybe find out what it is. And I figure, okay, if they tell me, look, it's a secret project, don't talk about it, give us your pictures, I would have done it at that time, because that was what I was feeling, I was in the military 22 years, held secret clearances. Maybe that's what it is. Anyway, a few weeks later, word came back to me that what I had taken pictures of was a weather balloon.
That is no weather balloon. Like, there is zero probability that is a weather balloon. It looks nothing like a weather balloon. And a weather balloon is like, it's not even shaped like that. It wouldn't stay in the sky that long. I mean, yeah, it could be like a shard of a weather balloon, but it wouldn't be that persistent, right? It wouldn't just...
Wouldn't stay up there.
Right.
So I thought, man, I know it's not a weather balloon. So, okay, if they're going to tell me it's a weather balloon, then that means that I can talk about it freely, and I'm going to, make a report on it. So I made a couple reports to a new UFO organization. UFO, can't remember what they are, and also to MUFON and the MUFON investigator, Sabrina Robb, who had prior Air Force experiences, enlisted security forces, and then later got commissioned and became a nuclear control launch officer and missiles and whatnot up in the upper Midwest area. And she did the investigation on it. I sent her pictures. We met. She had pictures analyzed by someone, and she was convinced in her report that she submitted was, and they have parameters of what they can say in their reports. You can't just say outright, oh, this is a UFO, no doubt in my mind. But there was parameters that they have in the reports. And she even asked to the MUFON headquarters, this is real, you should investigate it. And they chose not to investigate it. So then you got to wonder, some of it is, you find out later who all is involved in MUFON. I think there's...
Yeah, it's been thoroughly infiltrated by intelligence agencies.
Yeah. So they had my report, and I submitted one picture with it. And I thought, well, I'm going to self-publish a book and put this out. And that was the first book, Hiding in Plain Sight. I put the picture, it looks like a translucent manta ray on the cover. And all of those pictures in that book, the only thing that's done to them is enlarging and cropping so you can see the object. And with each picture, I kind of try to identify what I am seeing and what I think it is. And then a lot of guesses, say a hypothesis is an educated guess. I don't know if it's a true hypothesis because I don't know what it is. So anyway, that was the first book. After that book was published, I was introduced to an individual that prior Army pilot, maybe Intel as well in there. I'm not sure the connection. They retired. I know they have a NASA connection. And I don't know exactly what that is, but they do a lot of analyzing. And he said, can I look at your pictures? Do you mind sending them to me? And I want to, the program, he told me what it was. He said, look, I'm not going to change anything. The program is the same thing the FBI uses to enhance evidence. And I guess they take away pixels or whatever they do in that enhancement. So he did that. And when they came back to me, they were like, wow, that is really freaky. Whatever it is, you can more clearly see the edges, the shapes, and the colors of it. And so then those are the pictures that I enlarged and put in the second book, Hiding in Plain Sight, Volume 2. And again, just more my own personal opinions about what I'm looking at and guesses about what it may be, because this object was there for when I noticed it. I don't know how long it had been there before I noticed it, but the time period I looked at it was about over a 3-hour time period. And I didn't look at it constantly because I was busy. I was doing my push-ups. I had a goal for that particular day, and I would do a set of push-ups. I'd see it. I'd take pictures. I'd do another set of push-ups. I'd see it. I'd take pictures. I did that at least 10 times. And in between there, I was preparing because I was going to give a presentation that evening. And then later I took a shower, and it was just about at the end of when I couldn't see it anymore to the shower. And it could have still been there because there were times when I could only see it when I was wearing my glasses. I know it's there. I can't see it with my eyesight alone. I put my glasses on, I could see it. And then I left in the afternoon because I had to leave. And there was some officers there from nearby Tyndall Air Force Base. I asked them if they needed any reports of UFOs or anything. They said no, they hadn't heard anything. I'll get back to Sabrina. She had introduced me to Rich Hoffman at SCU, and I sent him pictures. We communicated back and forth on the phone and email. And
by the way, that guy's definitely intel adjacent for sure.
Yeah. So one of the emails he sent me, and he said he was organizing the pictures based on what he could see, and they had the capability to enlarge things. I don't know, the 2,400 megapixels or something, he said. And then we talked a couple of times, and then he just stopped communicating with me. So Sabrina and I talk, and we think, well, and yeah, she hasn't heard from him either. And so, well, maybe he found something that he can't talk about. So it's just cut off all communications, which I think, I look at the pictures and it's like, well, that's weird. There's something there. She also at that time had sent a few pictures to Lou, and don't know what he thought about them at that point. So they were friends, and they still are.
That's Lou Elizondo, just to be clear, right?
Yes.
Any attention that you may have gotten after you released these, like people showing up at your house, people taking pictures of your house, or surveillance, anything like that?
No. At the time, where I was living was very remote in northern Minnesota. I've since sold that house. I travel around a bit. I don't own a house right now, so I am kind of mobile. I guess I'm at my son's house a lot of the times here, or in another state, or other relatives. I mean, I'm in a position right now where I'm not sure about buying a house again, or a condo, or a boat. I don't know. Just travel around and stay with family and figure out what I want to do.
The near-death experience that you had, that was in what year again was that?
That was 1987.
Okay. Just going back there was a before and there was an after. Did you find any changes in your awareness that you noticed after that incident, or was it your perception of reality was the same?
The changes were internal. I mean, my own awareness, my own feelings, more so of dying. We're all pretty much afraid of dying. I don't meet anybody that I want to go. I want to die. You're scared. You don't know what it is. So that changed a bit there, where I still don't want to die, but it was a different perception of after I do die, where I'm going to go somewhere. It's not the end. There's afterlife. And I don't want to die, but I just have that perception, that awareness that there is an afterlife, and that part itself is comforting. And,
Okay. Okay.
The other, I don't know, say lessons or things in that time period of the near-death experience, but knowing that we are all connected, whether it be through the energy or the consciousness, that feeling, to be a kinder person, to be more open to people. Everybody's going through different things in their life as they progress from children to adults, and everybody has different struggles, and just feel aware and open and friendly, kind, not critical. I think of more of an awareness with animals too. I hunting, just it's not something I have done, and I still eat meat, so I understand the animals, but they have a connection. And so it's very difficult. I don't want to just go out and shoot animals like in a hunting situation. I think that was something there that changed a bit.
Can you explain a little bit more about that? The reason I ask about this is, this will sound kind of weird, but I've kind of noticed the same thing with myself. I haven't had any, as far as I know, near-death experiences, but do you have any experiences with owls? Like, just, they kind of just show up like on your, I had one land. I mean, I'll show you after the interview, but I had one land on my fence, a great horned owl, and I was able to approach it. I got within 5 feet. I have 1,000 photos of the owl, but that's not normal. Stuff like that. Is that kind of the stuff you're talking about?
Well, not so much that, but I've had a couple opportunities to see some amazing owls. I just saw one a couple of nights ago fly in front of me out of a tree. It didn't hang around. They're very quiet, and you don't see them. They're there. But a few years ago, sounds funny to say I was in a tree, but I had climbed in a tree with a camera because I was taking video and film of deer, and an owl landed just a couple of feet above me. It was one of those snow owls, those huge owls. And when it came in and landed, it was like, what the hell's going on? It scared me a little bit because I don't hear them coming in, but you hear the bushes, the branches moving, and I just like froze. And I wanted to take a picture, but I didn't dare move. And so, it was only like 3 to 4 feet away from me on another branch, and that was a pretty neat one. But I've seen them many times.
This will sound crazy, but if you ask them not to move, they won't move.
Yeah, I didn't at that time. I was just thinking to myself, don't move. But yeah, I didn't. But as far as animals, they communicate. And I think, they have better eyesight for the most part. They can see different light frequencies. They hear better. I think that their connection, I told a friend about a year and a half ago, that I was taking pictures. I take a lot of pictures of things I see in the air, and sometimes you don't see the things. I was taking pictures of some birds at a high altitude. I don't know if they were vultures or eagles or what. They were so high. But once I took the pictures and started enlarging them, I could see other bright spots that were moving around where the birds were. So I was like, whoa, the animals have some type of interaction that I felt. So, it's not a picture that I want to say, hey, look at this as an NHI or an unidentified object. It's like, that's nothing. You look at, oh, that's nothing. But to me, I know I saw something. And I think they have an interaction. I think we could have an interaction, but we don't know how to interact with them as much. You have a pet animal, a dog, they sit, lay over, go fetch or whatever. We have that interaction, but I think you can have, and a lot of people do have a deeper interaction than that.
Yeah, there's something to it. I just don't. Even historically, right? You've had some saints like St. Thomas of Assisi, right, that had a really strong animal. interactions. So there's definitely something to it. Any
We have
other?
a couple.
Oh yeah.
Now we have a couple of rescue pits that are, they're very friendly to me. Strangers, they're going to be more wary of.
Any other experiences that you've had?
With animals
or just in general? Anomalous,
I had the one in Wisconsin that was really weird with a light that was shining down. So,
yeah, I mean, I've heard this story, but my audience hasn't. Can you share that a little bit? When was it? Where? I mean, it was in Wisconsin, but where in Wisconsin?
Yeah, northern Wisconsin, near Fort Wayne was the nearest little town. It was just in the evening, out by a campfire, myself and four other men, a father-in-law and his brothers and his son, and suddenly to realize I have that paralyzed feeling, like you're trying to wake up. It's just that, like you have sleep paralysis, but it's like I'm thinking, what is going on? I feel like I can't move. I can't really see. It's just like a membrane of focus, not really seeing anything. But I'm thinking, I gotta wake up. I gotta come out of this, and then to suddenly break free of this paralysis feeling, and still there on the chair where we all are, and I'm trying to think what is going on, and I realize there's a light shining down on us, and my mind is processing, well, what is that light? It must be a helicopter. And then I think, well, if it's a helicopter, I would hear noise and I would feel wind. There's no noise, there's no wind. And I look at each of the other guys that's there to see if they're aware of what's going on, and they're not talking, they're not moving, they're just standing there. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And as I'm trying to get out of this disoriented feeling, the light begins to move, just like if I was holding a flashlight, a beam of light, and I'd move it like this, the whole beam would move. And that circle on the ground started to move, and then it just clicked off. And I looked back up, because I had seen where it was coming from earlier when I looked up to figure out if it was a helicopter. And it went off, and I'm looking up trying to see what it is. And all I can see is a dark shape. I can't tell if it's got wings or tails, but there's no noise. There's no wind. And I can see where it blacks out the stars behind it as it's moving. And just a couple of seconds, maybe 3 or 4 seconds at the most, and then it just disappeared.
Did you have any instances of missing time after that incident?
I never looked at a watch or a time to know if there was any missing time with that. Like if we'd been out there for an hour and then for 5 minutes. I didn't even think about that. I was just kind of in shock trying to put it together. What was that? I had no clue what it was. And I don't know, stay on edge, but just a feeling of unease, anxiety for a couple of weeks, to wondering what it was. And, we had a computer, so I'm trying to look online and see if anybody's reported any type of just a general search engine.
Remind me what the date was of that event, or roughly the time.
I think it was September of 2004.
Okay.
I have to look back in the calendar. I know I looked it down. But
is this close? Wasn't the other when you got the picture? Was that in 2004 as well?
That was 2019.
2019. Okay. Interesting. And that was off of where specifically was that?
Which one?
The 2019 incident.
Panama City Beach, Florida.
Okay. Because I think there was like a spate of sightings somewhere in the United States. I don't know if it was in that area, but.
Well, Florida's always got sightings. And about almost a year later, within a couple of weeks, I saw a report that somebody had from Panama City Beach. They had a video of an object, a circular bright sphere, which is what I saw as well. But I had a little bit better camera, I think, with an extended lens, and was able to take pictures and see more than just the bright sphere that it was, or was able to catch it in between, because maybe they didn't see it for the whole time. Maybe it disappeared. Maybe it manipulated those light frequencies and it was still there and they couldn't see it, like it did for me when I couldn't see it without my glasses. But I witnessed it in that transition as it went from those light spherical balls of light into a shaped object, and then go back into that sphere of light, and then back into some object of elongated, or looks like it has wings. And some of them, I posted one the other day. It was number 1047, and it looks kind of long, like a squid looking thing. And on the side, there's a round area on the side, like a portal on a ship, or a round window, and it's got the crossbars in between them. You see in a window panes. I think they call them muttons or something like that. But what is that? I mean, that's like, you can clearly see the lines. Mm-hmm. That's what I put on Twitter, on our X.
I mean, this is just a random shot in the dark, but the Soviets reported two kinds of entities that they would see related to UFOs. The first were just biologics, right? Biological beings. The second was something they called plasmoids, which are effectively sentient plasmas. And I think recently, before all these drone sightings, like literally right before, I think sometime in September, there was a call for papers at Harvard University about plasmoids. So I don't know if they're related or not. I don't know if what you saw was a physical craft, or perhaps it was one of these plasmoids that was just kind of morphing into different shapes, or I don't know. But that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, before I knew about these reports from other institutions, plasma was a thought that I had as far as what some of it looked like to me. And it's as it changes and moves. One of the pictures, it looks like it's exploding and pulling apart. It's like, it's very, very weird.
It's definitely very weird. The fact that everybody went dark after you reached out is also another tell. The weather balloon as well, explanation. All right, I want to ask another question that's kind of entirely different. It'll revert back to your experience in the Air Force and things like that. And you don't have to answer this question if you don't want, but we should proceed pretty delicately. Are you aware of the Jake Barber egg kind of stuff like that? The whistleblower Jake Barber?
Yeah, I saw that on X is where I saw it come out.
Are you aware of his military background? Or are you familiar with it?
Only what I've seen on X, what was produced in the video that News Nation and Ross put out.
In relation to that, because he was an Air Force guy, presumably, is that kind of path typical? Are there questions you have about it? Obviously I'm trying to figure out if it's, because I was in the Army. I'm better at evaluating Army military records, but I have no way of kind of assessing if that is a typical path or if it's like highly atypical. The other thing that gave me pause, and this is probably unfair from my standpoint, but when he says he liberated Kuwait, but served in Kuwait in 1994, right? There's a difference between serving in Kuwait and liberating Kuwait. Liberating Kuwait means one thing to me, and that means 1991 actually liberating it. So anyway, all this other stuff, I have no way of evaluating it, but that one thing made me a little, I don't know. I don't know how to. So anyway, I'll stop talking now.
The path is atypical. Certainly some of it. We get hundreds of applicants that try out for pararescue and combat control, and 10% or so end up making it all the way through and graduating. So during the pipeline, if something comes up for whatever reasons, sometimes guys go off to different career fields. Usually they're unable to do a certain point of training. And that's the reason they go off to, I don't know, Jake. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. So, that's his story, and very well could have happened as he says. I don't know. The after part of the isonics and everything, I certainly believe there's something to it and there's something out there. The military side, certainly I think there were red flags that were raised in that situation. As far as Kuwait, I was on the first MH-53 that crossed into Iraq at 1:00 in the morning. So
you buried the lead, Scott. You didn't even talk about that in your military career. That's huge.
So I was part of the team. I wasn't driving, I wasn't in the driver's seat in there, but as far as air missions, you get a missile that's fired up at you from the ground. That's scary. So yeah, as far as that part of Kuwait, I can certainly talk about that, and the Air Force controllers and PJs that were at Kuwait, King Fahd, Al Ju, Farar, different areas. But yeah, so that was that mission right there. That was a joint mission, the Air Force and the Army, where the MH-53s had the electronics to terrain follow at a low level, and the Apaches were led into a certain point. They didn't have that avionics at that time. They probably have it now.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they got to certain points inside Iraq, then they broke off and did what they did with the early warning radar systems and devices. And we were there to retrieve them, pick them up if they were to get shot down. And
the MH-53s, they're the little birds?
No, that's the big helicopters, MH-53 helicopters.
Okay.
They're quite large. The Navy calls them Sea Kings, I believe. But the body is almost as big as the Chinook, but it doesn't have the two overhead rotors. It's just got one, the main overhead rotor and a tail rotor.
Okay.
It was so large when it came into Vietnam, and somebody made the comment, it's because it's camouflage green colors. Look, it's the Jolly Green Giant. And that kind of continued on from there. And that became the call sign, Jolly Green, for the rescue helicopters.
Okay. All right. So just, again, going back to Jake Barber, you would say that, and correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, that there are aspects of his background that are atypical, but you can't decisively rule out, whether or not that background is legit or not legit. It's not a slam dunk.
Again, I don't know. He did go through the indoctrination course and passed that indoctrination course. Went into the pipeline. What stage in the pipeline he was in when he changed over to aerospace mechanics, I don't know. I was a pipeline instructor during probably close to that time period. I didn't meet him, so I don't know where he was. But I mean,
is there any chance you might have missed him, or is that's unlikely in the pipeline?
Possible. It's certainly possible. But I mean, it's typical for guys to want to go into pararescue and combat control, and then go through training, go through the indoctrination course and training. And then usually when they get through that part of the course, they would make it all the way to the end. So it is more of an atypical point at that portion to leave the program for another career field.
Mm-hmm.
When he did it, why he did it, I don't know. I wasn't there. I guess I think he, from the papers and from the reports, he was in for about 6 years and then went on to other things.
All right. Any final words about all of this anomalous stuff?
Final words from me, I guess, from my final words from my own self is that the universe is big. We're a very small, minute part of it. There's more in the universe and Earth than we are. Something's out there. Everything we see in the sky or the ocean doesn't mean it's anomalous, but keep your camera ready because sometimes you may see something that is. I mean, look around us. Everything in the ocean, I mean, is an alien to us. We can't live 1 inch underwater on our own, and much above 15,000 feet, we don't really survive. You know, we live in a very small band of atmosphere around this Earth, and there's many things that live out of the atmosphere that we don't know about, and things that, whether it be under the water or in space, we're learning all the time. Just keep an open mind, and be ready with a camera.
All right, Scott. It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you for spending part of your Saturday with me.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks, Sean.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.